Before we blast into something else, anybody else want to throw anything in there? Yeah.
Yeah, on the Rule 62 thing, there's an old saying that says that the spirit of the law that gives life, it's the letter of the law that kills. In the beginning, all of the groups had their own rules, and when they had a rule that wasn't working, they made another rule to compensate for it. And what Dr. Bob said is, let's keep this thing simple. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. And what I have to remember is that when somebody else is using the traditions to bludgeon the group, or they're using something to hurt somebody else, without being, because we're alcoholics. We could make Simon agreement like Mother Teresa. And when I apply that Rule 62, I have to remember that the first person to whom it needs to be applied is me. Yeah. That in trying to help something, to do something, I just can't take myself too seriously. Yeah. And then it goes on from there. Thank you.
Yeah, good deal. Right, thank you very much. Yeah.
What are the three legacies?
The what?
You talk about the three legacies.
Oh, yeah. The three things. One's recovery, the steps. That's the program of recovery. And so legacy recovery, that's fundamental to the whole thing. Unity is essentially embodied in the traditions, and that's about how we work together, how we work in unison, how we have unity. And then the third is the one we talked about this morning, is service. So that's the legacies, and that's a package deal. If I don't have good recovery, I'm going to do lousy service. So it's a package deal. Yeah, a good question. We assume everybody knows that they don't. Yeah.
My name is Mark Alcott. I just want to close out Tom right here. When it says three of these are indispensable: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. At the end of the traditions, it said we must practice these principles in all our affairs. Are there traditions and spiritual principles, or what are exactly the other nine? In black and white, somewhere to find them. I can't seem to find them anywhere.
Best I understand, traditions were the product of our experience. So as the founders were sort of putting things together and dealing with the mistakes and all of the kind of stuff, traditions were formed to establish the unity, the cooperative kind of environment. That steps of personal unity is how we get along with the world around us. I think a lot of it really came into fruition, started to have impact when in '55, when Bob was gone, but Bill at the International in St. Louis introduced, the traditions had been introduced. They were introduced a little earlier, but they weren't really implemented much. And then in '55, when in effect, Bill turned the fellowship over to the membership with the design of the General Service Conference, with the notion, his vision was that the home group would become the driving force in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that the traditions would be the framework for assuring how this works together. And so that's where that legacy thing came in. That's where the triangle and this kind of thing really got identified, got really be a landmark for what we were about. And so traditions were vital to that whole idea of how we would function as a fellowship. And Bill was a little optimistic about. He was an optimist anyway, but he was a little optimistic about how well we would do. We were talking about this a little bit earlier in the session about how well we would do, because that's a marvelous concept. This idea that grassroots will drive the process. But just like we were talking about the other day, the concept simply has not achieved fruition. Meaning that when we meet, rather than having a group conscience, we wind up with a minority opinion, because it's predicated. His whole idea was built on the fact that home groups would be, like we had a little publication called "Home Group Heartbeat of AA," and the whole idea was that the home group would be the driving force in Alcoholics Anonymous. It would dictate what we would do, and the conference would be simply trying to pull that all together and package it. Well, it's a great plan, but just, I mean, it's like I mentioned the other day, I know y'all all wrote this down, that what we see is a travesty compared to what Bill envisioned. That when we meet to gather the group conscience, where the feelings and ideas and beliefs of the home group are expressed and carried forth for decision making, 23% representation in the United States. Now, I'm sure Canada's better, but that's what it is in the United States.
Tom?
Yeah.
I was asked, and people have been asking you your opinion and your ideas, and we've been asking you questions and your thoughts on things for 3 days now. Is it fair to say then that what you've been sharing with us is a representation of your group?
That what the way I'm dealing with it is a representation?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I probably am not in sync with an awful lot of people. And yeah, I'm not a revolutionary or anything like that, but I'm an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am not a spectator. I am a participant. And it's not always true. An awful lot of people quit functioning in AA just because they're old, I don't, I'm still wide open. So I don't know, and I really don't, I try not to get into controversial things where there's a real polarization. I try not to get into too much of that. And I just simply share what I honestly believe is just like what we're talking about now. I have trouble to find out that we do have 23% representation in expressing the group conscience. I've shared that at the area level, and considerably at the area level. Shared it with our delegate in an open session just recently, and she's a marvelous girl, great delegate. And she said, "I sure wish that wasn't true, but it surely is," because I was inviting some dispute of that. For God's sakes, I'd love to hear somebody say, "You're wrong, it's 40." I'd be the happiest guy in North Carolina. But nobody argues with it. And so we haven't voted on it, but it's just, the feet do the voting. When you got 23% of people showing up, you don't have to worry about whether that's the expression. And it's very troubling, because rather than dealing with a group conscience, we're dealing with a minority opinion. It's what it is, a minority opinion that's guiding and directing what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's troubling to me. But right here, then we'll go right here.
Just right on that, to continue with that note, from the time, now this percentage, 23%, had you, on previous years, was there a specific time that you can say, okay, they're starting to become a change around this time, or of that nature? Like before it was 40%, before it was 70%, now it's 23%, or it's always been somewhat around the 22%?
From my experience, it's never been earth-shaking, but it has been better. It has been better. I got into general service work in 1960. The first time I served as a DCM. We were a smaller, simpler deal. Our area committee for the entire state consisted of 20 people. So we had excellent representation. Nobody ever missed a meeting because you couldn't hide. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you're not there. And so it looked better, but it was a much smaller kind of a deal and a much more accountable kind of a deal. And over the years, we'll get there. And over the years, it has just exploded into a whole bunch of different kind of stuff. That back then we were a much closer, more intimate kind of deal. We pulled together. There was a lot more unity and a lot more familiarity. For example, and we'll get there in a minute. Don't you forget. Because I won't. Don't you forget. I'll give you an example of what that looks like in real life. And I mentioned earlier about how we've had an explosion of meetings developing all over the country, and that's true. I mean, my God, we got more meetings than you can possibly imagine. Back in the days when I was really getting active in service and all this kind of thing, if a new group started somewhere, it was a heartwarming thing to exhibit, to observe, because what would happen is that every group in the area would join in, and they'd come in to be supportive of that thing, real tight kind of a connection. Today, we barely know each other. We barely know each other. It's like, I won't divert too much on this, but my wife's from Saskatchewan. First time I ever understood the culture of a prairie wheat farmer was when I watched what happened with my father-in-law. They built their home. They felled the timber and they insulated with prairie sod, and all that. And the next door neighbor was 3 miles away, and those two men loved each other dearly. One of them was my father-in-law was just a little old small guy. He was a good fellow from Scotland, and his neighbor was a guy named Jake Nyber, huge guy, big old mountain of a man, and they were intimate friends, and I didn't understand why. But then, when I looked at that culture a little bit, these people literally depended on each other. I mean, they depended. If somebody's horse was sick, the other guy bring his horse. Excuse me. In that culture, if you don't get your crops in and you let that snow get them, you're done for that year. And so it bred something in the culture that was tremendously important. And so I use that analogy because it's very much like AA was then. Because we were people, I had the experience of starting Alcoholics Anonymous in a town. I know what it feels like to be the guy standing there holding the flag, hoping somebody will show up. And it was more in that mode. Today we've got groups everywhere. Just almost every corner got a group or a meeting or something. So it was a big, big difference. So back then, I don't think it's a fair comparison, but of course you had a larger representation. There was no hiding place, And so you either showed up or said, "Where's John?" Got that. So it was different, but the whole culture was different. I think is the point. But it was never as bad as 23%, to my knowledge. So I think it was, but it was a changing world that we're in. But thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, my question is, of your reference, the 23%, I'm not sure what number you thought, that's 23% of home group membership, or?
Of registered groups. Of registered groups. Like in my state, it means that 23% of the groups that are registered in North Carolina show up to express the group conscience. Yeah. And so you see what the trouble is. You got 77% ignoring. Yeah. I hate to use a bad reference, but it's like the political world. That we get, good God, we get ridiculous numbers to elect national leadership. But we don't need to smirk at it because ours is just as bad. And so it is. It's a troubling thing to me. It's troubling in terms of Bill's vision that this would be a fellowship driven by the grassroots. But it can't be driven by the grassroots if the grassroots stays home. So we have to engage in that kind of a thing. It's, thanks for asking about it, so we can clarify it a little. Yeah.
Tom, what about the notion of an oversaturation? Could I explain the problem of why there's this minority phenomena within such a well-defined organization? For instance, I've experienced here, just being only recently returning to the fellowship, where we're calling out to other groups to come in to support us because we're having difficulty even maintaining our proper accounting just to keep the doors open. And so we're making appeals to other groups who are also struggling with their membership and fellowship, trying to keep their doors open. Yeah. And so basically, we're playing hopscotch with one another's groups to try and keep everyone supported in this endeavor. So could you
well,
that a little bit?
The thing is, our structure should bridge that gap. But only if we participate in it. That's the whole design, is that the groups come together and the group consciousness is a collective wisdom. So that's a great concept. But when you only have 23% showing up, you don't have you've got a minority opinion being expressed. So that's ideally is what it would be. that, it's like at Fourth Tradition, groups are autonomous except in matters affecting other groups. And so it's sort of a warning to us not to let one group forge ahead and impact on others and all this kind of stuff. It's cooperation that we need to have. And we have really cut down on those things where we gather, as a larger community. We've cut down. Big city like this, you don't have to go anywhere. You got a big crowd with you. But if you're in the prairies of Saskatchewan, you need a neighbor. You're bad, because they're far few and far between. So it's a different world. 1 second, and be right here.
I think when you look at the percentage you're talking about, I mean, you can look right down the whole structure of AA, and you go sit in an AA meeting, and how big of a percent of people at the end of that meeting pick up a chair or do any of the work? And when you go to an AA function, how many percentage of the people actually do the work when it's done or set it up for? So you're probably looking at the same thing, and I think that's pretty well worldwide when it comes to anything. I mean, I sat through a lecture of a fellow that talked about service work throughout the whole community of the whole world, and it wasn't just for AA, but for the whole thing. And then the numbers were almost identical to what you're talking about on people that actually volunteer in this world. So you're looking at that's about the best you're going to get.
Well, most people are not suffering from a fatal condition. We don't do it because we're nice people. We do it because we need to. And so I understand what you're talking about. It's not exceptional to us, but we need to be exceptional. And we're dealing with something. I can tell you that, and it gets back to that thing we're talking about on leadership. Of the people I sponsor, 100% are involved. If I'm in sight, well, that's part of it. Part of my job is to enlist them in. But people are not going to just automatically just jump in and do stuff. You get interested, sit back fat mouthing. So we're good at that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think that's where those of us that have been here for a little while have a responsibility to help people understand that. For example, when I get a new person, in all honesty, the first thing I give them is not a big book. First thing I'm more apt to give them is a coffee pot or a broom or a table. Because what I find is that sense of belonging that's connected with being part of a team is vitally important. And so I don't want him to be brilliant, I want him to be busy. I want him to get in there so he feels like he's part of something, So that's what I'll do with him. Now, we'll get down to cases, get down to program. But first, I want him to know that he's in the right place and he's got a place. He's useful. And so I do that. And that's my way of getting folks down. And I like to do that kind of thing. Yeah.
My name is Merle. I'm an alcoholic. Why did Bill Wilson have such a hard time promoting the General Service Committee in the early days?
He did a good job promoting. I just think we didn't have receptive customers or something. He was introducing a whole brand new idea, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but I was waiting in the wings. And but this whole thing was new to people, the whole deal. In 55, I came in 57, and this whole idea of the structure of AA, that was still in the infancy stage. And so I think Bill had a tremendous challenge in trying to get that vision out. And got it out, that he literally was asked to not speak about traditions as he went around to different places in the country. People would ask him, tell your story, don't tell about those traditions, And so it was a hard sell, for him to try to get this deal. But most people are thinking provincially about it's about me and here in my little corner in the basement. Hard to get people out of that thing, and to see that thing of. I don't know, but that's what it looked like. He had a hard time getting people to listen and think about something more than themselves. Is I think what it really came down to. Hard sell. Somebody, yeah.
Or somebody else?
No. I'm sorry. Yeah, this fellow right here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask that when you talked about the last time that I was here, when you were here in '04, that when you talked about the difference between a vote and a group conscience, and just, you kind of grazed upon that here in the last couple of questions. Can you just give a very, very brief experience of that, please, the difference between a group conscience and a vote, please?
Now, not a very, very brief. Not very, very brief. I went over that the other day a bit with the, and I gave the example about the thing of reimbursing speakers, for this kind of thing. That, and same with the group conscience. I gave that example. Yeah, I don't expect older members to remember all this stuff. Yeah, young members remember it. But I gave the example, and it really gets at that whole business about representation, and all that. That we were going over the pre-conference report in my home group in the business meeting, and that I was watching that and thinking about Bill's vision, and so I said to the group when we finished our report, I said, if old Bill could see what we're doing tonight, he'd smile, because that's exactly what he envisioned, was that the group conscience would take a concern or consideration and then really give it the test of thorough discussion at the home group level, and then would move that forward. And so that was his whole idea with this deal of the General Service Conference, and how the home group would be the driving force. But it's hard to be a driving force if you're not there. And so when you got 77% staying home, you got a very weak kind of a deal. And so that's the thing that's troubling to me, and with that whole idea that and group conscience is nothing more than what I like to do is pull something out for group conscience that really tests our principles, that we really need to prayerfully consider, not just a quick vote. But more than that, it's got to be a thorough kind of examination of what is the right thing to do. Not most popular, but what's the right thing to do. And that's what the group conscience is about. It's just getting down to that, to what we honestly believe is the right thing to do. And so to me, that's an awfully important kind of a distinction that between just doing business and getting down to what our real business is. Thanks, Al. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that when I first got involved in service, my sponsor at the level of DCM, GSR, and up the ladder, I'd never been involved in that. So he suggested I go and ask somebody that was in that kind of service to be my sponsor, which I did with a service sponsor. And one of the greatest things that he gave to me that helped me, I said, will you be my service sponsor? And he says, yeah, I'll do that. And then after that, I said, well, as a new guy does, right? What do I do now? Right? And the first thing he said was, go away, get the book called Language of the Heart, and read the book Language of the Heart. Because a lot of the stuff we're talking about here, like it was the greatest thing he could tell me. Like I found out how all these traditions came together and how they were developed, and very valuable resources, the book Language of the Heart.
You bet. Yeah, thank you. It really is. That Language of the Heart is nothing more than a collection of articles Bill wrote long ago. That's all it is. It's not a new publication. It's the old thing, but it's really, I use it a lot. Thank you for that. And by the way, now I'm somebody who does not do service sponsorship. I like a package deal. I like to have all the legacies met. And so if people ask me about being a service sponsor, no, I wouldn't want to do that. What I want to do is we take the whole deal. If we get too stratified in one area, I want to be concerned about the entire fellowship and not just one particular area. That's just my own bias about that thing, by the way. Right here.
Can you talk about getting through hard times in recovery?
I did.
You did?
I did.
I must have missed that part.
That's because of a hard time in recovery. It'll make you shut out stuff. No, the only thing I said that. There's two things I mentioned that I run into a lot. As a general rule, when somebody I'm not sponsoring is talking to me about a problem, my response is not automatic, but it's almost always fits. You're working on the wrong patient. You're working on the wrong patient. If somebody's talking to me about a problem they got with somebody, it's not the somebody, it's themselves. And so, that thing of being in tune, practicing the principle and all that kind of stuff. The other illustration I gave was about getting through that crisis time of just survival, of making sure that I don't drink. And that what it boiled down to me was two things. One was when I get it, and I've had it, not for a long time, but I've had it, where I absolutely was overwhelmed with the obsession to drink. And what I did was two things. And nobody taught me. I just learned it by necessity. One is to pray, and the other is to hang on. And I've gotten through every one of them, So, but I think that's what it comes down to. There's no neat trick for doing it. It's just a matter of sometimes you just got to grit your teeth and pull on through. And the antidote to it, to me, is just staying really, really engaged in the program. So it's a way of life and not just something I attend. That's for me is what works a great deal. Yes, somebody over here. Yeah.
Yeah, just to back up for a second, so I have a better understanding of the peripheral consideration. Because I know how it works in our business meetings. We call a vote, and that's pretty simple. There's hands up, yes, hands up, no. When you're bringing a group conscience in the way you've described as a peripheral consideration, would you bring up an issue that needs to be decided on and have everyone go home for a week or so?
Sometimes we do.
Have experience in peripheral consideration and then bring it back? Mm-hmm. Is that the process?
Yeah, we'll often do that.
Or is it decided in that meeting where you may all pray together and then come up with a conscience? What's the process?
Yeah, we'll often say, give this some thought. And then we'll do a group conscience. We don't confuse group conscience and business meeting. They're two totally different worlds.
Would there be a long time frame in between where you bring it up and let's have a group conscience? And
not too much. A couple of weeks at most. Yeah, but you basically just want each individual to have an opportunity to think it through. So we're not just doing a pop quiz, and some sort of spontaneous thing.
So it wouldn't happen all in that same meeting. There would be a gap of time where people would take a moment.
Sure. And then the opportunity to examine tradition, like the one I use on reimbursing speakers for the expense. And that got into traditions about self-support and that kind of thing. And the solution that the ad hoc committee came up with and recommended, I didn't agree with, but I didn't vote against it. It would not have been my suggestion, but it was a pretty darn good suggestion. And so I think that's what happened with prayerful consideration. People will come up with things, but giving thought to it and not just some spontaneous reaction to it. Right. And that to me is what's critically important about it. And differentiating that we really do trivialize the term group conscience a lot by calling that a business meeting a group conscience. And that's not. That's just survival stuff. That's stuff you do operationally to have the group run. Take care of coffee, stuff like that. But when you get into a real issue that principles matter a great deal, that's awfully important to me to have a differentiation between.
I've heard that a lot where members will say, well, we need to have a group conscience on this, and I don't think a lot of them know what they're talking about when they say that, because it's usually there's a 5-minute discussion and then there's a vote, and pretty much everybody in that room thinks that we've just had a group conscience, and I, for one, would be one of those up until this weekend.
Yeah, we often trivialize it. We sure do. Yeah.
The actual term is informed group conscience.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
We let out that informed thing. So we need to study it. We need to look at it. Yeah. Otherwise, what it really becomes is a kangaroo court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what that time thing can do, is give people time to get informed. That's good point. Yeah. Sorry, but we've been missing that thing.
Yeah. A couple of things that come to mind. One of them, I'm with GSR for District 42, and it was new to me when I started, but one of the things my sponsor did very early, he says, if you want to stay sober, you do what sober people do, which is pick up ashtrays, chairs, and, he said then coffee, that whole thing, and so I learned that. And anyway, when I became a GSR, it was all new to me, quite a bit of things, and we were having a separation from another district and some money and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, one of the things that came up is that there was the amount of GSRs in our district was a small number, compared to the number of groups. But then we found out by doing some research is that there was a lot of meetings, but they weren't groups. And some meetings didn't know that they weren't a group, right? They're just naive. They didn't know any different. And they felt that when they registered, in our Vancouver area, that they become a group. But that's not the case. You have to register with New York as a group. And so we were able to get our GCM to go to some of these meetings and tell them the difference between a group and a meeting. And just this Saturday, unfortunately I'm here, we set up a workshop that was a service in AA. It shows what a GSR is, a GCM, and we try to promote it, sort of like a little pop-up lunch. And,
tell you, the one problem with that, we've got the most loosely defined expression of what a group is, that it could not be more general. Two or more people gathered for purpose of recovery may solve themselves as a group, provided they have no other affiliation. And there really is no criteria. That if people call it a group, that's what it is. I'm a strong group guy, but in terms of trying to define it, that it's an arbitrary kind of thing. I do a lot of workshops on home groups and this kind of thing, and I always use that thing of trying to differentiate the two, but it's my differentiation. The best definition I ever heard of a group is two or more people, one of whom needn't be present. That's an enigmatic kind of definition, but it really is what it is. It's the sense of belonging. It's a belonging. Like my wife and I are a group. She's not here, but she's still my wife. And that's the same thing with a group. When you got a meeting, you got a casual collection, and a group where you got some committed relationships. But there is no definition for it. And when we make up one, it's ours. As it's not supported in the literature, not supported in traditions. But that I feel strongly about it. But as far as a clear delineation, there is none. No, we just ought to make it up. Just 1 second. We got Joe right here. Just 1 minute. Yeah.
Well, it's off topic of the group, but I just out of interest, have you ever met Bill W?
I did.
And how did you relate to your meeting with him?
Well, I already loved him, but when I met him, the primary reason I went to my first international in '65 was to meet Bill. I didn't want to tell him anything. I just want to make sure he was there, And that really was it. I just wanted to be there. And so as he was there, he was like the Energizer Bunny. He was all over the place and everywhere. You see him a lot. But I know you won't believe this. We had a traditions meeting, and we had a skinny crowd. And I was one of the crowd. So I had a chance to meet him. Now, we didn't become fishing buddies at all, But my mission was accomplished. I met Bill, had a chance to say hi there. We chatted for 2 minutes, and then it was gone. My mission was accomplished. And I had believed that might be my last opportunity. It turned out it was. Because the next one in Miami, he died immediately after, and I couldn't get to Miami. And so I was right. I followed the instincts that have helped me a lot over the years. So, I did meet Bill, but that man was truly a visionary. He really was. To me, he just absolutely was able to describe this movement, this energy, second to none. I loved him dearly. Yeah. There are a lot of people, I swear to God, they must be bored or something, but you got a lot of muckrakers that are trying to dig up stuff and verify scandals and stuff that, for what, for God's sakes? For what? He was a human being. And I was in a state just south of here recently, and there's a guy there that I love dearly. And he wanted to get together. He's quite ill, quite ill. He wanted me to stop by and see him, so I went by. Went in, and here's a guy that's at the end of his rope, pretty close. And I went in, and he was telling me about what he's doing, and he started telling me some stuff that wasn't making a lot of sense. And he had a big old book there, and he said, "Take a look at that book. Have you ever seen that?" And I big old thing. It looked like one of the coffee table books. Picked it up, and I said, "What is it?" So he started telling me some goofy, off-the-wall stuff about some notion of Bill doing this or that. And now I'm looking at a guy that's terminal. And I'm a kind-hearted person. But I thought about that. He was complaining and bitching because nobody would come to see him. He had to get a guy from North Carolina to come see him. And so I'm listening to that, and I'm thinking, do I just act like I don't hear anything and just walk off into the sunset? I said, no, let's don't do that. So I told him, I said, my friend, let me suggest something to you. You're not reading a book. You're doing an investigation. For what? I mean, come on, man. Good God. You don't need that thing at this point. Now, what you're doing is driving people away. Who wants to come in here and romance something like that? And so no wonder nobody's coming to see you. They're not going to, and so it's sad, people get off into that kind of junk, instead of trying to find out, what was the values of a guy that introduced the fellowship to the world. And you're going to throw some little piece of something, good God, come on, give me a break. And so, anyway, it's just unfortunate when you see that kind of stuff going on. He was a human being, yeah. Guy in the corner, been.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, it's been a good retreat. And, I was struggling when I first came here, the dark moments, and now the candle's been lit and inside again. But what kept me here all weekend is I'm waiting for the homework assignment.
Go team! Thank you for that. By golly, I really appreciate that. Let me lay this out, and we'll come back because I know that the president's going to call time on you. You want to do the quick one? And
Explain the difference between a group inventory and a group conscience.
Well, group conscience is sort of looking for the spiritual solution. Is looking for what the principles are. It's going. Group inventory is evaluating how you're doing what you said you were going to do. So that it says you're evaluating a plan. Our group inventory is simple. We laid out those 20 things we did in that starting that. That's how we evaluate a group, how we're doing on that. So it's basically like a merchant would. If he wants to know what his inventory is, he counts his cans. If he wants to know what his customers are, he evaluates his principal. So there's a big difference, and that's really what it comes to me. The assignment, let me tell you the assignment, and obviously I'm not going to check on you to see if you're doing it. I can tell next time I'm here whether you're smiling or not. If you're somebody that wants more than you've got, if you're somebody that wants to feel that you're carrying out your primary purpose, if you're somebody that would like to see alcoholics have a better chance at recovery, then the homework assignment might be worthwhile. I mentioned, now don't walk out, you're going to get one. Don't want to hear it. What it is this. I was telling that little deal the other day about the detox and the lady over the behavioral unit and the fact that nobody knew what happened to the alcoholics who hit the wall. We have alcoholics hitting the wall every day, everywhere, within walking distance of where we are, and I guarantee you alcoholics will hit the wall today. It's a universal thing. What I would suggest, if you really want to do something about that, and then you don't have a plan of action, go back to your neighborhood. In Vancouver, I'm talking about all of them, like Vancouver. Go to a place where you live, where you're part of a community, where you really have concern about the health and welfare of folk in that community. And identify a place where alcoholics hit the wall. And that could be anything. We hit the wall in a lot of different ways. Broken marriages, with welfare stuff, social services, with church ministers. It's amazing, how many places alcoholics hit the wall and where they go. And, that a hospital, a detox course, a triage nurse, places where alcoholics go when they are absolutely up against it. And when you identify that, evaluate it and see what you think ought to happen. If there's nothing happening, if they're hitting the wall and lost and don't know what to do, think about what ought to happen. Take the example that I used about when I was talking to that gal that was over the behavioral stuff, and neither she nor I knew what happened to alcoholics who couldn't get admitted. So what we laid out was a plan where we would simply provide phone numbers, and if you have to send somebody out in the cold, tell them they can get some help by calling one of these numbers. Simple plan, eh? Simple plan. Simple to us, not to somebody running a hospital. They don't have a clue how to do it. And you try to call it in the phone book, try it when you get home. Take a look at the phone book, see what's listed under the A column. My God, man, you can phone call to the moon looking at some of that stuff. So just a clear little thing like that. To identify the problem, think about what needs to be done, and then try to implement it. The last 3 12-step calls I only had 3 last year. I used to have 3 a day, and I only had 3 last year. All 3 of them came from ministers. All 3. Because that's where alcoholics go when they don't have any money. They go to the guy, he doesn't want anybody. That's where they come from. And it's as simple as that, eh? I mean, you don't have to start a movement or any kind of thing like that, or organize committees. Just take it on, and go somewhere where they hit the wall, and we've got that going everywhere. And then lay out something there that here's what you can do with that. Most people don't know. It's been a long time. Go to employers who are having to fire folks who don't know what to do with them. Treatment is becoming less, I don't know about Canada, but it's certainly becoming less available in my country. And so, that would be the only thing I would suggest, because just feeling good, and that we've talked about some stuff that has some worth and value, has to me, I hope it has to you. But what does it mean unless you take some action on it? And so how to make it come alive, that's what I'm talking about, is to do this thing. And that would be the homework. And next time I hear you, you can give me a report on what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, thanks again for inspiration here. In your 53 years, you've heard what drives your needs and drives your AA. I would love to hear what, in these 53 years, that point where you were thrown back in your chair in awe, and as a result of a situation or something you've seen that just you knew God was working in these rooms.
Something where it went down or up? Up, huh? Up. Something that really was exhilarating.
Yeah, that was just you knew God was working in these rooms, and it was just a beautiful thing in your life.
Been a ton. There have been a ton. Not so much movement wide. I don't have that kind of oversight, but I'll just give you an example of just some things that many years ago I was working with a bunch of guys in prison, and I was really exasperated at the seeming futility of the work, because it looked like nobody was catching on. Nobody was really becoming a member. And I took 10 guys, and said, let's build a group. And the 10 guys, we went to work and built a group. And we wound up calling it the Triangle Group, Recovery, Service, and Unity. It happened to be located at a place called the Triangle in there, but it was the Triangle that put it together, Recovery, Service, Unity. I watched that group develop 3 different groups within the group. One, a recovery group, a newcomer deal. One, a unity group, which was a speaker meeting where somebody came in, we had unity with people outside. The other was service. When they developed the service group, I didn't get to go to it because it was a closed meeting conducted by inmates only, inmate AA members, no coffee, no brownie points, no nothing. And all 10 of those, and that's been 45 years ago, all 10 of those men are either sober today or died sober. Yeah, why is that exhilarating? Because it proved to me that this intensive work, where we really get into the nitty-gritty of this program, doesn't miss. It absolutely works. It will just take the time to get in and do it. And so that's just one that's had great meaning. Watching what happened during the Big Book Workshop and seeing something that produces absolute results. It proves to me there's nothing broken in AA. It's a matter of us just not hitting the ball and not moving forward. So I've had many, many mountaintop experiences that are exhilarating. The president said,
Thank you very much.
we don't have to go home, but we can't stay here.
Carry on. I've got to run, so just like to thank everybody for letting me participate to the level I've been able to participate in that.
All right. It's always disturbing when the captain deserts the ship. Who's the vice president? You got it. Yeah.
This is the vice president. 10 minutes.
Oh, I thought we.
Want to go 10 minutes, or you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
10 minutes. Let's go. Let's keep going.
All right. Yeah, we can do it. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on roundups and conventions, Tom?
Love them.
Yeah.
Love them. Yeah, I tell you, it was enormously important to me, and I'm glad to see you guys here, particularly if you're relatively new to the program. You know, when I came into AA, I was a pretty isolated guy, and when I hit to North Carolina, conventions were absolutely essential to me because it expanded my family, and I got to know people. I tell you, kind of a funny thing happened. Drunks are really slick. Now, I just got out of jail, and I don't have any money. You know, I mean, I'm as poor as a church rat, and we're getting a group going. And the minister of the church came by one night, and he said, "Can you stop by the office for a minute, and before you go home?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "You working late?" He said, "Well, yeah, I'm just hanging around." So I went up by, and he said, funny, sneaky drunks. Yeah. He said, I'm pretty naive. He said, the AA members in this area, they're having a convention in Durham, and they would like for you to go there as their delegate. And, well, I didn't know anything about it. I thought, well, God, we're going to vote on, the coronation or something. I didn't know what we were going to do. And so I said, okay. And he said, no, they will pay your expense there. And I said, well, I'll be glad to do it. So I go down to the convention, and even as naive as I was, it didn't take too long. I said, I've been had. We ain't voting on nothing, man. I mean, this is a party. This is good time, whoopee, and all that. And I said, those suckers have sandbagged me just big time. I went back, I got that minister, and I said, look here. I said, that's not the way this thing works. I got snookered. And I said, you're going to have to give that money back to whoever you got it. He said, that's the problem with anonymity. I don't know who it was. But that's how I got to my first convention. Yeah. But what a wonderful thing to start seeing the world grow and seeing that. At that time, at that convention, I knew nobody. 5 years later, I'm at the International in Toronto, where I went to see Bill. I didn't know 10 people. I was in San Antonio a 3 weeks ago, whatever. Swear to God, I think I knew just about everybody there. It's a marvelous thing. It's the thing of the growth in the fellowship and watching it grow up around you. To me, that's what's important. It's not the scintillating dialogue and all that stuff. That's okay. But that thing of being part of a family, where there's hardly a place on this planet that I can go and not know somebody. What a wonderful feeling. Wonderful feeling. And that doesn't happen by just sitting home and waiting. It's about getting out and being part of the action. So, man, they've been tremendously important to me. And I love them. You got your hand up? Yeah.
What's your experience with participation and cooperation with Al-Anon?
With Al-Anon? I'm glad you mentioned. Let me just tell you, good news, bad news with me. I believe alcoholism is a family illness. I rarely hear that said now unless I say it. You rarely hear that in Alcoholics Anonymous now. You used to hear it nearly all the time. And I think it is a family illness. I think the family suffers. I mentioned the other day, I think sometimes the family suffers more than we do because they have to explain behavior they don't understand. And so I'm a great believer in the vital nature of it. I also believe that while we're not affiliated, there's a close dependency relationship between us. Right now, without question, Al-Anon is experiencing a huge decline. They're really getting into not trouble, but they're just losing their membership. It's really going down. I frankly think a lot of it is the product of what we've been talking about with these little one-dimensional meetings. You know, you think about what the average one-dimensional meeting looks like. Where does the family get in? How does the family get involved? They can't. They can't. And so I think what we've done is effectively started to minimize that vital nature of that relationship. And so I think it's awfully vital. You know, my wife told me a while back, somebody asked her, said, "How on earth do you put up with your husband traveling so much?" And she said, "If it wasn't for Al-Anon, we probably wouldn't have lasted 3 years." She's probably right. Yeah. So I think it's a vital thing. And so what we're experiencing now is, honest to God, I think we have basically shut family out. Nobody planned it. Nobody drew up a plan for it. But as we have developed, we have just effectively closed out the family in much of the country. And so I'll give you a specific example. I spoke at a convention a while back. Well, it's Florida. I mean, it's no deep, dark secret. It's Florida. It was a huge conference. There were 38, it really struck me, there were 3,800 members in attendance, alcoholics, 3,800. Now listen to the numbers. There were 240-something Al-Anons. There were 23 or 4 Alateens. Does that sound like a family illness in a family program? I don't think so. I don't think so. That it's I think there's reason for concern in that. I have concern about it. We have a strong Al-Anon group in where the same place we meet, and they're not part of us, but they doggone well are part of the fellowship and that thing. So I think it's awfully important kind of a thing. That families so often, we have an extremely high divorce rate in recovery. High divorce rate. And I think some of it has to do with that thing of ships in the night type stuff. So it's kind of a live nerve with me with that kind of thing. I tell you that I've never understood this. I don't know if I ever will. We alcoholics will tend to be about as emotional and maudling about how much we care about our kids. Not unusual at all to see somebody talking about kids and just tear up. You know, it's a very sore point. I'll never understand if you go to a conference and see the Alateens trying to have a meeting. We ignore them like the plague. We ignore them like the plague. You see some kid in there trying to suck up the nerve to just get up and speak. I've had them literally say, "Would you please come in and listen to us?" That, we've got to have somebody to talk to. And that same conference I'm talking about, an Al-Anon gal came up to me and she said, "Let me tell you what my daughter said." I was in the Alateen meeting. And she said, "Let me tell you what my daughter said." Then she called her and said, "You know who was in our meeting?" She said, "No, who?" She said, "Tom I was right in our meeting." Well, my God, that's a no-brainer. But when you're a 16-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid trying to speak to somebody and you can't even get anybody to listen to you, come on, man. Where's all that compassion? Yeah. So I think we really have gotten pretty sloppy about that kind of a thing. And it's just we're not paying attention to it. It's what it looks to me like. So do you have concerns about that? Yeah. You do? Yeah.
We have a roundup. We have Al-Anon as a guest speaker from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. We have lots of participation in AA meetings. From the Al-Anon meeting, everybody's outside smoking.
Yeah.
To me, that's an insult. I learned how I hurt my kids and what part I played in my life. Attitude through going to Al-Anon meetings and going to Alateen meetings. I don't bring to That's where I didn't learn it from Lorraine telling me what the hell my problem was.
Yeah.
I learned it by listening to other members of
Yeah.
share their stuff. That's all.
Yeah, it really worked. I tell you, I'm speaking Tuesday night in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Some doctor that I don't know called and asked me if I'd come up there and speak Tuesday night. And my son had talked with him. He talked to my son about getting me to do that. My son grew up in AA. You know, he's not as a member, but he grew up. He went through Alateen, and he understands the program. And I thought, this is really something. 2 docs trapping me, you know. But it came from that family deal, you know. This guy said, your dad, the one that I think I know? And he said, yeah. And so that's what happened. But if the family's not in on that, you're not going to, you know, all you can say is duh, you know. And so, but they grew up in it, and it has great influence on them. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think it's vital. Yeah, back in the corner.
Just quickly on that Al-Anon, Tom, in 2013, the Al-Anon World Convention will be in Vancouver. So.
Really? All right. Yeah. Shoot, I might bring my wife up here. You never know. She's a rich Saskatchewan farm girl, so she can afford it. Yeah. Say what?
That's going to be the Al-Anon's first international.
Oh, the first one. How about that? Way to go. Couldn't get our international, so you get the Al-Anon international. Go for it. You got it. Well, listen, guys, we have beat her hard, and I have thoroughly enjoyed being with you. It's just been an absolute treat, and you're a good bunch. You know, there's some wayward souls here, but we'll get them. We'll get them, man. We're going to capture them. I got you. So thanks a million. Great to be here.